Avid Investors Club, welcome, hello. I'm Stacy McBain with Swope Investment Properties, and we just had a great meeting with Steve Rausch of Capital City Law, who answered a lot of member questions, a lot of my questions, and some of the questions we didn't know to ask. And to highlight that meeting, we talked at first about the eviction moratorium ending March 31st. It's been a whole new world with COVID-19, and there's been an eviction moratorium. Most of the members that answered our poll expressed not having real issues with tenants and rent. However, the Idaho Apartment Association has reminded us that we can tell our property managers or our tenants about some resources that are available through the Idaho Housing and Finance Association to apply for rental assistance. So if anybody is struggling, or you feel they may fit the criteria, we should certainly refer them to the Idaho Housing and Finance Association to see if there are any benefits that could help them. And we also discussed charitable remainder trusts as a method that was used a lot in 06 and 08. And one of the big takeaways there is it's for the charitably minded investor already. And it can help not only donate a percentage of an asset's worth on passing to the charity of your choice, but in the meantime, it can help with some taxes and offsetting them. And in Idaho, we're not seeing a lot of trust serving as an asset protection method like we are in Wyoming and Nevada. And when asked, it's uncertain whether Idaho courts would then respond the same way Nevada and Wyoming and other states' courts would if using a trust to help as a form of liability protection. We're seeing them more as estate planning and gifting. For example, an irrevocable trust when gifting assets to kids or beneficiaries. And with that, you don't have to worry about, say, daughter's credit interfering with your asset while you were still managing it, but you can estate plan using that. And beneficiary designation for an LLC being a trust is something that came up, as was self-directed IRAs. Those are another method of investing in real estate. And one of the things that came up there was self-directed IRA LLC, where you manage it as a managing member. One of the big things to remember about self-directed IRAs is it has to be removed. It can't be a property that you use for your own gain. And another trend that's been happening for owners who have one property in every LLC and start to accumulate a lot of LLCs would be having a managing LLC above all of that. Even still, it's important to have your ducks in a row. So if you rely on the protections that asset gives you, that LLC gives you, you've got meeting minutes, separate bank accounts, which requires an EIN and things like that to show that there's indeed a separate entity that is responsible and to prevent the corporate veil from being pierced. Planning for rainy days, but not during rainy days. And so doing your estate planning and your asset protection planning when there are not problems is a lot easier than doing it once you're, quote, on notice and there is a problem. And speaking of being on notice, if you are told of something that could be an issue by a tenant or put on notice to what may be a safety concern, it's always really important to investigate that concern to make sure that you're not leaving a liability loophole open, because once you've been told, you're on notice and therefore could have increased liability. And Steve still does a radio show, for those who are wondering, but schedule's a little bit variable right now. Right now it's on Monday nights, but could change again, the Real Money Show. And whenever we talk about law, we also talk about insurance. And so the question arose about adding an HOA or a manager to your umbrella insurance, and is it worth the nominal fee and something we should do? And the resounding answer was yes. In fact, we could also ask to be added to an HOA's insurance as a named insured as well, if the case seems correct. But that cross naming seems to help. And another thing that really helps, since in real estate, insurance is one of the biggest asset protection tools that we have. And so to get the most out of your insurance, Steve recommends having the insurance agent walk the property and ask them to tell you what insurance you need. And so that way, when you're not covered, when the insurance company refuses to cover something, then you can say, well, I had your agent of your company come out and look at the property to advise me on what insurance I did need. So it would have been your responsibility to ensure I was covered. And that is a strong strategy that he recommends to make sure you don't end up in some insurance loophole where you're not covered. But overall, insurance is a great tool, and take advantage of that as investors. Get insurance, get an umbrella policy. And if you need some help along the way, one great way to have a relationship with Steve or your attorney would be to have them do some of the administrative tasks of your LLC, like doing the meeting minutes each year. It's affordable to have your LLC started that way and managed that way. And then it has you in touch with your attorney. So those were some of the big takeaways we talked about. The full meeting has been recorded, as well as my market update from the Swope investment property standpoint on what we're seeing in the real estate market. And both will be made available. Thanks to AVID investors. Stacey McBain signing off.